I'm Seth Lawrence with this expanded local newscast brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the morning show. Streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Rowell Thursday announced his office filed charges against a former road commissioner in DeWitt County for allegedly using a township credit card to make personal purchases and submitting forged receipts. Rowell's office charged 68-year-old Eldon Cusey of Wapella with theft, a Class 1 felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison, 4 counts of official misconduct, Class 3 felonies, each punishable by up to 5 years in prison, and 17 counts of forgery, Class 3 felonies, each punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Cusey's court date is scheduled for March 14th. Rowell said in a statement, government employees have an obligation to use government funds and property responsibility. Taxpayers must be able to trust those who serve on their behalf use authority for public good and not enrich themselves. The Illinois State Police led the investigation into Cusey's alleged misconduct. ISP Director Brendan Kelly said in a statement Thursday, the public must be able to trust public officials to use their tax dollars ethically. Illinois State Police Special Investigative Unit will continue to investigate public corruption and work with the Attorney General's office to bring justice to those who break the law. In documents filed with the DeWitt County Circuit Court Thursday, Rowell alleges when Cusey served as road commissioner, he used the township credit card to buy personal items, including home goods, pet food, alcoholic beverages, and live chickens. Cusey allegedly submitted altered receipts to conceal the purchases. Cusey resigned from the position as road commissioner in 2022. The public is reminded the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Assistant Attorneys General Mara Somlo and Haley Buchhout are handling the case for Rowell's Public Integrity Bureau. Central and Southern Illinois are prime locations for carbon storage. That's the message from experts in the field interested in storing carbon dioxide underground in parts of DeWitt County. At the Thursday night DeWitt County Board meeting, Emil Anderson with Vault 4401 explained the project in DeWitt County is part of the ethanol pipeline running through the Midwest.
So our project goes through 5 states. It's a 1,300-mile pipeline, and we've been tasked by over 30 ethanol facilities and 1 fertilizer facilities to build this midstream infrastructure piece. And it's a dynamic piece of infrastructure with multiple on-ramps and off-ramps. So we'll have utilization ports to really solve the supply chain shortages that we've seen in the past. And then ultimately coming to Illinois for that sequestration over a mile underground. And we were commercially anchored by Valero Renewables. So they reached out to us to build this piece around their 8 facilities, and then we've since added the Poet facilities, their ethanol, Big River Resources, their ethanol. We have one of their plants here in Illinois, up in Henry County, OCI Fertilizer, and Siouxland Ethanol as well.
According to Anderson, the project works with local landowners, and filings for the project go through the state of Illinois agency. She indicates a new set of filings happens this week.
So we kicked off what is a years-long process back in 2020, and that was with our original route development. And now we're at the process where we're working directly with landowners on those easement agreements. So at no time do we own the land. We are simply having permanent easement. So it's like a 50-foot permanent easement for our line. And our range of the diameter of the pipeline ranges from 6 to 20 inches, so 6 inches to 20 inches. And then, so right now we are in the process of refiling with the Illinois Commerce Commission. So we originally filed back in the summer, and we officially withdrew that today, and we're refiling tomorrow. And so the reason that is we would have had 2 dockets open to account for an additional sequestration site. So we wanted to streamline the process and have 1 docket open with 1 timeline. So that's kind of where we're at. And that starts an 11-month process where the Illinois Commerce Commission would then give us at the end of that process the A-OK to construct our pipeline in the state. And so during that whole time, we're working with landowners on those easement agreements. There's really 3 buckets of compensation for landowners. It'd be the permanent easement, the 50-foot permanent easement, and then a temporary easement of 50 to 75 feet. And that's really for, the piles of dirt that we put on, topsoil on one half and on the other, the lower soil. And then we also have, the construction equipment. And then the 3rd bucket of compensation is the crop loss damage. And so we're doing 250% of crop loss, and that's really over a 5-year timeline. So we don't anticipate landowners ever reaching that 250%. But if somebody does, that's really indicative of a greater issue. And so that we'll come in and we'll mitigate that issue. And that's all on us. So that's contractually any part of the process, we will handle compensation as well for that.
The ultimate goal of the effort is for carbon capture in DeWitt County and other locations in central and southern Illinois. Representatives from Navigator told the board Thursday more about the basics of carbon storage.
So when we think about where the CO2 is going, it's going deep underground, right? So we've got, what is the storage footprint? We've got 4 Willis towers stacked up here just as an example of how deep we're going with this. And it's being injected into the Mount Simon, which has a cap rock above it, the Eau Claire Shale. And we're looking at 3 to 6 injection wells, approximately 30,000 acres to accommodate those injection wells. And the amount for this portion of the project that we are contracted with to develop for their Navigator. So there's continuous monitoring that goes on with the wells once they are constructed, and our biggest concern is obviously the long-term safety and integrity of the wellbore and the storage facility. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about what the EPA process is, so that you guys have an understanding of how we go about developing these sites.
Steve Whitaker with Vault explains there is currently a project at ADM in Decatur they watch closely. He indicates Illinois has been a focal point for research on these projects.
Illinois has been kind of a focal point for this kind of research for about 20 years. And there was mentioned about the Archer Daniel Midland site. So there's an active project there that is injecting CO2 right now and ongoing with monitoring. So we were involved in that. I've been involved in the Carbon Safe program, where we've drilled a number of wells throughout the state, done a lot of work, collected core, did seismic work, and then tried to characterize the subsurface. So we know quite a bit about the geology here. Jennifer mentioned the Mount Simon, so that's a sandstone that we typically look at, and that's a very deep formation, and it's anywhere from about 1,500 to 2,000 feet thick, and it's right at the base of where, on top of the basement, which we call the Illinois Basin. So the Illinois Basin is the structure where all these rocks are found.
According to representatives from Navigator, this is pure CO2 storage with no other contaminants that will be stored, and explains how the carbon dioxide is separated.
So we have carbon capture equipment that we install at each facility, and so it has to go through an extensive process of dehydration, getting out all the water, and that's like a 3-cycle process. And then we compress it, or dehydrate and compress it, and pressurize it into the system. And so it has to meet a certain spec in order to get in the system. And if it doesn't meet that spec, it won't be able to get in. And so it'll be recycled in that process. And so there won't be other contaminants. This is pure CO2. So when you've seen CO2 pipelines have been in existence in the U.S. since 1972, and there's over 5,000 miles of them currently. And so if you look at a lot of the existing ones are, more in the southern areas like Texas, and those have been, CO2 has been used for enhanced oil recovery. So pushing out the gas. But that's not what we're going to do in the system. We can't pull it back out once it's in the sequestration area. But I hope that kind of gives you an idea. We don't have like H2S in our system, or H2S in our system like you've seen in some of those other naturally occurring, EOR. So water, all those things are corrosive, so we won't have that in our CO2 stream. But we're also using cathodic protection, and that's a charge on the line. So we'll maintain the cathodic protection. And we'll also do like smart pigs in the system to make sure that the wall thickness stays where it needs to be. So we'll maintain that pipeline and, in perpetuity, really, as long as it's maintained.
Whitaker was asked about the efficacy of the transfer of carbon dioxide into the ground. He indicates while nothing is 100% risk-free, they do measure the structure of the well for any deficiencies in it.
I have a question on the well itself. saying it's like a mile deep. Okay, how is the casing, once it's down there, how is it sealed for this mile depth? And I assume there's a way that you try to seal it or you say you seal it, but is that a 100% guarantee that it won't be leakage back up that pipeline?
There's no such thing as a 100% guarantee on pretty much everything we do in life. But the way the wells are drilled is there's a bit that goes down and there's an empty hole in the earth, right? Now, what we do is put casing in. So the casing is roughly 30-foot stands of casing, and they get screwed together, and you lower them down the hole. So there's a space between that metal and the rock, right? The wall rock. You inject cement. So you go down to the bottom of the well and you inject a special blend of cement, and that comes up the outside of the casing and between the casing and the wall rock. And so you pump that up till it gets to surface. So you fill up that whole annulus, well, the space between the casing and the wall rock with cement. Now that cement blend it's been designed to be able to flow properly and make a good connection. But what we do after that, we let it sit for anywhere from probably 24 hours because it's got to harden. And then we run a tool down the well. It's called a bunch of different. There's a whole range of different kind of instruments. You can lower down the hole and you bring that up, and it measures. It actually measures the cement bond. It's called a cement bond log, and it uses sound waves. And it actually sends the sound waves out, and it can measure how that is, and it can track whether there's little holes in the cement along there, and it gives you a very good picture of how well that's cemented against the wall rock. And if you see that and you see, well, there's a bit of a gap there are ways to go back in and remediate that, including going into the casing, shooting through that casing so you have holes in it, and then pumping more cement. It's called a cement squeeze, and you can fill up that space. So there's ways to measure the integrity of that bond. There's ways to remediate it, and there's annual testing of the wells, mechanical integrity testing. So you would pressure them up and make sure that the pressure is held so that there's no leakage seen in that well. The well itself, there's another tubing that goes down the center of the well where the CO2 goes down. So the CO2 isn't pumped right down through the whole casing. It's pumped down through a tubing that's central to that. And in that tubing, you can run packers, which isolate zones, and they're expandable packers and that. So we can do a lot of isolation within the wellbore to we do that so that the injection is within a certain zone, and we can measure all that. You can also put gauges and things in the wellbore, so you can measure pressure, you measure temperature. We actually instrument along the well with fiber optics to measure pressure, I should say, to temperature and things like that. So there's ways to measure the well, the integrity of that well, and it's an ongoing maintenance process with them. As I mentioned earlier, there's a special case. You use a chrome casing at the base where the CO2 is being injected. Yeah. So
you mentioned you lived in Champaign, so you're aware of the Wapella fire and,
yep,
and the problems that has existed in it.
And that's
in the past,
yep,
it's just something that I personally feel we can't take a risk on. The water is the life.
Yeah, then we don't. We're not. Yes, well, I agree. I agree with you 100%.
It has to be a better place. My opinion.
That's fine. I mean, you understand the difference between that natural gas storage site and a CO2 storage site.
Similar to wind and solar projects, there is a financial benefit to this project going on in DeWitt County.
So pipelines aren't taxed in Illinois. We, as good neighbors, we want to be here long term. I live here. This is my area too. But to be good neighbors, we want to have project development agreements with these counties. And so it's kind of like an in lieu of taxes kind of agreement. And so it would be a 30-year term where every year we're paying, instead of like in other states where we're paying property taxes on the pipeline, we're paying to the state and they remit some to the county. This would be directly with your county, and you can decide how to use those funds. And it is a collaborative process. So the project development agreements aren't, here, sign on dotted line, like work with me on that and we can negotiate to get to a point where we're all happy. And so if you're looking at like on the pipeline side, if you're looking at like, the mileage, say like we come in through Iowa, we come to Illinois through Hancock County, say about 30 miles. So that would be like around $600,000 per year that we would give that county. to be able to, use for that community. And there's other community investments that we're going to be doing as well, like, economic development. But that's like one of the main things that we do with counties as well.
When the question came up regarding if the county has any say in the process, State's Attorney Dan Markwell did note applicants, in this case landowners, would have to file for special use permits and meet any requirements the county has in place for CO2 storage.
So pipelines aren't taxed in Illinois. We, as good neighbors, we want to be here long term. I live here. This is my area too. But to be good neighbors, we want to have project development agreements with these counties. And so it's kind of like an in lieu of taxes.
The pipeline is regulated by the Illinois Commerce Commission. The well sites, we need permits from the US EPA, which, as Steve indicated, is a multi-year process. It's a long process. And as Danielle indicated, there's a couple of different moving parts at the county level. One is potentially a project development agreement. Another is if there's special use permits that are involved for like above ground, fencing and that type of thing. But in terms of the counties, as we understand it under the statute, the county, the ICC has jurisdiction over the pipeline route, and the US EPA has jurisdiction over the well sites.
And then our regulator is the PHMSA, Pipeline Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration, and that's through the US Department of Transportation. So they're the regulator of all of the setbacks and the operation, construction, those kinds of regulations.
So potentially some agreements, but no approval per se.
Road approvals.
Road use.
Yeah.
Haul route agreements, road agreements, damages, that type of thing.
Okay, so you say EPA is the one that gives you the authorization and the counties have no say in it? I know in the pipe, is it not true that the pipeline, and you guys could run your pipeline, but to do these wells?
Well, the landowners have the ultimate say, but then, yes, the US EPA is the regulator.
So if it's not in the zone for the landowners to be able to give that say?
Landowners have to give a say. We can't just go and put a well on anyone's land. So we have to have a landowner approval for that. And then, the regulator is US EPA for the construction and design.
For a Class 6 well, it's the US EPA that regulates it.
But we have to have an agreement with the landowner.
Mm-hmm.
And so that landowner may have to come for a special use permit through the county then?
I wish the state's attorney was here. He'd probably be able to
Yeah, he is.
answer that.
He's over there.
Oh, there he is.
Well, the landowner's gonna have to follow whatever regulations they have, be it state or local. So if it's zoned in a particular manner that wouldn't allow that, they would have to come and get a special use or a variance or whatever it might be to allow that particular usage.
Board Chair Dan Matthews indicates with all the changes that took place at the state of Illinois level on wind and solar, he predicts this will be the next domino to fall for the state to come over the top with regulation.
A couple of you, just real quick, last time we're not going to talk about, but a couple of you asked me why would we have them come here when it is not allowed in our ordinances? And my answer to that is we build ordinances to protect from some of the wind and solar, and we're seeing that the state of Illinois is dictating what we're going to do. So in my eyes, I can see this being the next, initiative that it gets shoved down our throat, being that, Illinois is going to say this is great for the environment, Illinois is doing their part, and whether we want any part of it or not, we don't have to decide tonight. But that's why I had them come here. I thought it was informative to just hear what they had to say. Some of you guys had good questions. So.
Also at the Thursday night DeWitt County Board meeting, the board appointed Dr. Annalee Rorscheib to serve on the DeWitt Bi-County Health Department Board with the term to expire June 30th of 2025. She will take the place of Dr. Tricia Serba on the board. The board appointed Holly Gelbach as the new county animal control administrator. The board approved a bump in pay for election judges' compensation, and the board approved the land use committee to authorize the start of text amendments for wind and solar ordinances. News time is 26 minutes after 7 o'clock. We'll wrap things up for this newscast when we come back on WHOW.
At Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton and Baum Motor Company in Farmer City, our job is to help you and solve your transportation needs. This is Scott Baum. both in Clinton or Farmer City. We'll listen and find options for a different vehicle, or we'll give you repair options to keep that car, truck, or SUV safe and trouble-free so you can continue with your busy schedule. If it has to do with transportation, we're here to help. Visit our full-service team today in Clinton or Farmer City. Baum Chevrolet Buick, right from the start.
News time is 27 minutes after the hour on this Friday. Again, coverage of news streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. Farm income in 2023 is probably going to fall below last year's record high. Gary Crawford has this quick report. The USDA is accepting public comment on a proposed rule amending animal disease traceability regulations, including electronic ID of certain cattle and bison undergoing interstate movement. Rod Bain has this report. Get news anytime at DeWittDailyNews.com.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason. Not a single Democrat showed up for yesterday's Republican House field hearing on the southern border crisis. The hearing held in Arizona. The Yuma County Sheriff says President Biden's failure to secure the border has been fueling lawlessness across the country. Congressman Jim Jordan says that more than 5 million illegal aliens have crossed into the U.S., along with a flood of deadly fentanyl. It is the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is vowing that 2023 will be the year of victory for Ukraine. They were random attacks. That's what Florida authorities are saying about this week's fatal shootings of a young child and a TV news reporter in the Orlando area. A 19-year-old suspect is in custody. On Wall Street, Dow futures down 226 points. More details at srnnews.com.
My brother-in-law died suddenly.
With SRN Sports, I'm Michael Harrington. Let's go straight to the NBA scoreboard. Dallas getting a win with some new personnel.
The Mavericks rolled to a 142-116 rout of the Spurs. The first win for Dallas with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in the same backcourt. Doncic provided 28 points and Irving added 23 as the Mavs stopped the three-game losing streak. Doncic also had 10 assists and 7 rebounds before taking a seat for good after three quarters. Mavericks coach Jason Kidd.
Anytime you can score 142 points and Luka doesn't have to play in the fourth, that's pretty good.
Irving scored or assisted on 13 consecutive points early in the fourth quarter as a 10-point lead ballooned to 25. The Spurs extended their team record losing streak to 15 games and have dropped 20 of 21. I'm Dave Ferry.
That's for yesterday. It was the Nuggets over the Cavaliers 115-109, Magic 108, and the Pistons 106. This is SRN Sports. Elsewhere in the NBA yesterday, the Celtics down to Indiana 142-138 in overtime. Raptors 115, Pelicans 110. It was the Sixers over Memphis 110-105. Utah 120, Oklahoma City 119 in overtime. The Kings beat Portland 133-114. Lakers 124, Golden State 111. In the National Hockey League yesterday, Minnesota blanked Columbus 2-0. It was the Devils 4 and the Kings 3 in overtime. Oilers 7, Pittsburgh 2. The Sabres got the better of the Lightning 6-5 in the extra period, while the Ducks beat the Capitals 4-2. Detroit 4, Rangers 1. It was Vancouver over the Blues 3-2 in overtime. Vegas needed the extra period to beat Calgary 4-3. Bruins 6, Seattle 5, and Nashville over the Sharks by 6-2 score. AP Top 25 College Basketball, number 4 UCLA beat Utah. This is SRN Sports.
Time now for a look at sports. I'm Seth Lawrence with this report. For the second straight year, Monticello meets Prairie Central for a regional title in Class 2A high school boys basketball postseason action tonight in Fairbury. The top-ranked Hawks beat Monticello 65-56 in late January and will look to avenge last year's overtime loss in a regional final at GCMS. The Hawks led late, but Monticello rallied to a 55-51 win last February. Prairie Central enters play 29-2 overall. Monticello is 17-13. Prairie Central rolled at Clifton Central on Wednesday night, while Monticello pulled away in the second half from Iroquois West to advance to tonight's regional championship. Game time is 7 p.m. and can be heard on 95.9 FM WEZC and online at DeWittDailyNews.com. Class 2A regional final action tonight at Clinton High School. Bloomington Central Catholic takes on Maroa Forsyth. From the Auburn Regional, Pleasant Plains takes on Petersburg Porta. Tonight in Bismarck, the host, Bismarck Henning, takes on St. Joe Ogden. In Momence, it'll be Pontiac taking on Piatone. Tonight from Normal U-High, the Pioneers battle Williamsville. From Armstrong, it'll be Catlin Salt Fork taking on Champaign St. Thomas More in Class 1A. Regional championship action. Elsewhere in 1A, from the Cerro Gordo Regional, Decatur LSA takes on Decatur St. Teresa. Tonight in Ridgeview, Lexington battles Leroy. At Toledo Cumberland, it'll be Casey Westfield battling Meridian. Tonight from Tuscola, the host battle Arcola. Class 3A regional final action tonight from Champaign Central. Lincoln takes on Mahomet Seymour. Tonight in Mattoon, Decatur MacArthur takes on Mount Zion. Tonight from Normal West, the hosts will battle Morton, while in Peoria, it'll be Peoria Richwoods and Peoria Manual. Also tonight in 3A, Rochester battles Springfield Sacred Heart from Rochester. Springfield Sacred Heart Griffin takes on Springfield Southeast. And at the Washington Regional, it'll be Metamora and East Peoria. Terrence Shannon Jr. shook off a slow start in his return from a concussion, scoring 24 of his 26 points in the second half as Illinois rallied from an 18-point halftime deficit to beat number 21 Northwestern on Thursday night. Shannon did not start and found himself back on the bench with 3 fouls as Northwestern closed on a 13-2 run and led 37-19 at the half. But Shannon picked up steam after the break and scored 15 of the Illini's last 24 points as they erased a 14-point deficit in the final 10 minutes and 7 seconds. His tie-breaking drive with 1:16 left put the 19-9 Illini ahead 63-61. And Shannon scored the team's last 5 points, including a pair of free throws that sealed it with 2 seconds to go. Bowie led Northwestern with a career-high 35 points, hitting 6 threes and went 12 for 24 from the floor. Illinois started 0 for 11 from three-point range before Shannon hit 2 threes early in the second half. Matthew Mayer added a 3 and hit 3 free throws after he was fouled during a 14-1 run that winnowed the deficit to 4 with 15:06 left. Mayer gave Illinois its first lead on 2 free throws with 2:36 left. He finished with 14 points and 8 rebounds. Bowie kept chugging away for the Wildcats after scoring 22 in the first half, including 5 threes as he hit his first 4 shots out of the break to push Northwestern back to a 14-point lead. But Illinois climbed into a 4-way tie for third place in the conference. With 3 games left in the regular season, Northwestern remains in second, but fell 2 games behind Purdue. Illinois will play at Ohio State on Sunday. Elias Pettersson scored 4:45 into overtime as the Vancouver Canucks rallied for a 3-2 victory over the St. Louis Blues Thursday night. Pettersson picked up his 28th goal, beating goaltender Jordan Binnington with a wrister. St. Louis led 2-0 before Miller scored his 20th goal, 9:08 into the third, and Kuzmenko tied it with his 27th in the final minute. Rookie Tyler Tucker scored his first career goal for the Blues, and Alexei Toropchenko had a shorthanded goal. Binnington made 38 saves. Vancouver rookie Arturs Silovs had 20 stops in his third NHL start. Vancouver had a goal disallowed in the first. Miller scored on a delayed penalty at 14:27, but it was waved off after St. Louis challenged for goaltender interference. The Blues scored a shorthanded goal when Toropchenko beat Silovs on a breakaway at 15:25. Pavel Buchnevich intercepted a pass and fed the streaking Toropchenko for his 5th of the season. St. Louis went up 2-0 on a wrister by Tucker at 6:45 of the second. The Canucks challenged the play, arguing the goal was scored on a high stick by Ivan Barbashov, but the original call stood. Barbashov got his 100th career assist. Miller scored a shorthanded goal on a wrister and has 11 points in his last 10 games. St. Louis forwards Brendan Saad and Pavel Buchnevich returned to the lineup. It was Saad's first game since February 14th, while Buchnevich got hurt Saturday against Colorado. The Blues will host Pittsburgh on Saturday. Get sports anytime from your computer or mobile device at DeWittDailyNews.com.